to create your own leather bag? Want to create your own leather bag?
Got Print provides
Hello, guys. Happy Friday Eve. Oh my gosh. Went outside today. Had to run some errands with my husband. Oh, it is oppressive. We were out long before noon, and thanks, Druid. It is here in the Mid-Atlantic. It was like already 100 before noon. We got a heat advisory until I think 8 p.m. on the 4th of July. So yeah, I think I saw on a map, I don't remember now, at some point this week, early this week, where they were talking about, they showed the country, and it was like, you know, all of the colors, and yellow I think was below normal temperatures, and then like the bright cranberry red is like way over, and like the whole country's like cranberry red with like this one little spot somewhere in the Midwest that was like yellow. It's the most bizarre thing. Anyway, I hope everybody is staying cool, however you do it. Fans, shade, air conditioning. Oh, I guess, you know, they're having these heat waves in Europe too, and I guess they don't have air conditioning the way we do. So I feel bad for them because I guess they're kind of at their wits' end. As we know, this too shall pass. It's just terrible while it's here, you know. And I always worry about, you know, animals and the elderly and anybody that has to work outside. Oh, it's terrible. Oh, an appointment for 6:30 to 7. He showed up at 5:55. Calling him Scroat. I don't know why it is. For some reason, Twitch is censoring Scroat. But yeah, while I don't appreciate people showing up early, I also kind of don't blame him, you know? Like the earlier he can get out and get his work done, you know? And I'm sure people's air conditioning doesn't break when it's like just normal temperatures, right? It only breaks when it's oppressive like this. So anyway, I decided, I wasn't sure what I wanted to cover today, and then I thought, well, there was a whole bunch of V&A quilts that I didn't get to on Monday. So I thought, sorry guys, I'm going to take the easy way out. We're looking at more quilts from the V&A because my brain is not working. It's so warm. So, and yeah, we're like what, a day and a half away from the 4th of July, which is the 250th birthday of the United States. Gosh, the lead up, it seems like, you know, we've been thinking about it for a while, at least I have. Just because quilts and the bicentennial, that research that I did, and, you know, it's kind of been ongoing. And, that's terrible. What? Yeah, I think I'd be finding a new HVAC guy if he's talking about his bodily problems. Like, ick. Wow. Anywho, but yeah, it feels, you know, this 250th thing, you know, very long time ago, I must have probably been 2 years ago, I signed up for the 250th mailing list. I guess it's a he's just stupid. So I love the fact that Twitch did not censor sexually aggressive, but it did censor he's just stupid. Oh my goodness. You're cracking me up, Druid. I hope, despite this man's issues, he has fixed your HVAC or given you some relief there. Ugh. You go with what you gotta go with, don't you? Oh, you don't see the censor? Yeah, I guess because you're a mod. I guess I don't know. I don't know how that works. When your mod is going off the rails and using censored words. um. Anyway. So yeah, I don't know. Actually, it might be censoring between Twitch and OBS, because I actually see it in Twitch. It's just censored on OBS. So I don't know if maybe it's not Twitch that's doing the censoring. Anyway, who knows? But yeah, I feel like the 250th, like, what a nothing burger. I mean, I hate to say it that way, but I signed up for the thing, you know, just to see what the committee was going to do. I signed up for it, like I said, just like about 2 years ago. And the emails that I've gotten there has not been any information about, you know, anything that you can get involved with. You know, the bicentennial, there was all kinds of community stuff. The committee was like, you know, they had all kinds of stuff. And so, yeah, all the emails I've gotten have pretty much been like, here's some crap you can buy. And it's a lot of stuff that's like, who wants this? Like, you know, a 250th foam cowboy hat. Like, no, thank you. It's really funny. I think it was after my stream on Monday. A dear friend sent me, you know, knowing how much I love the bicentennial, sent me this article. I think it was New York Times, and it's about this professor back in '76 who saved all this stuff from the bicentennial. And he looked at it as like, you know, bicentennial branding was so like over the top. Like literally everything was branded with the bicentennial. And he recognized, and I can't remember what kind of class he was teaching, like what he taught. If it was like communications or I don't know, something in the humanities, I guess. So anyway, he realized that like all this stuff will probably not be saved in any way, right? So he started a collection of all of this stuff, and I can't remember now because I don't have it in front of me what the college or university is, but in any event, there was a picture of many of the things, and I mean, we're talking like paper coffee cups and paper things, and you know, menus, and a burger wrapper that still looked like it had burger juice in it. 50-year-old ketchup and burger juice, gross. There was condoms, bicentennial condoms. There was just like paper stuff, like things that, you know, we got a lot more of back then than we do today. Like, you know, your junk mail type stuff was all branded, I'm sure, bicentennial. And just anything like fast food or you know, you think it's Yale? I think it is, Betsy. That sounds familiar. So yeah, and I'm guessing you saw the article too. But it's just so funny. And I think it's something like the professor, he's like the bicentennial schlock is what they called it. But I'm like, I think schlock is a nice way of saying crap. Oh my goodness. So oh no. Druid, keep your head down. Keep your head down when you're at Walmart so you don't see this fat guy. So, okay, I know you don't like to reveal your age. You and I are in the same general age range. Sorry for outing you for that range, but some of my first memories are the bicentennial. And I think it's because after reading this article, I was like, I think it's because I can remember, it's like the eagle, you know, it's like burned in my mind, the eagle. And like my parents had some stuff that had the eagle on it, like the, oh gosh, I think we talked about this a while back, like the Meyer cord water slide decals that were so popular back then that you could just put those water slide decals on anything. I know my mom had something that had a number of things that had the eagle on them. So yeah, that I remember the bicentennial, not necessarily any kind of celebration around it, but just the stuff, the imagery, it like just sticks in my head. So, but you know, the thing is, Jared, you can say you may remember the bicentennial, but you were not a consumer yet. So you were tiny. I can vouch for that. But yeah, this, you know, this 250, it's feeling real floppy. And I think I said, and I might have said this on Quilt Nerding, but I had posted on the Quilt Nerding Facebook group about the 1926, the sesquicentennial, sesquicentennial, and they called that one the sesqui, and it was a major flop too. It was I guess they didn't get behind it the way they did in 1876. They, you know, they weren't planning for it as long of a period. They started trying to build this stuff in Philadelphia. You may know the name Wanamaker. He was here on the East Coast, Mid-Atlantic. He was a big, like, department store guy. Like, he owned department stores, and Wanamaker's, I think, was quite some time, like Philadelphia, Baltimore, like there was a major chain, I guess. I there were multiple ones, I'm certain, long gone before I ever made it up here, but they were a big deal back then. And Wanamaker, I think he died, I want to say he died before, or it was either right before or right after. I think it was during the lead up to the 1926, I think, if I'm remembering this correctly. But yeah, Wanamaker was like, hey, people, I will put money behind this thing. I'll put energy behind this thing, but we got to get going. You know, 1876, they were like starting 10 years before. And 1926, you know, people were like, yeah, I'm just too busy bobbing my hair and doing the doing all my Great Gatsby stuff, doing the Charleston, or whatever was going on in the 20s. So anyway, it seems like these 50-year ones, the 50s are not super enticing to people. So I'm guessing the 300, I won't be here for it. Most of us will not, unless we, you know, find the fountain of youth. Somebody had said, well, you know, my son, who was born in 97, he could be around for it. He'd be 103. I'm kind of doubting that he's going to be, he's shooting for 103. So anyway, you know, I hats off to the people that get involved with the 300. Those of us that were around for the bicentennial, it's a great and wonderful thing. So I don't know. I'll have to watch TV on Saturday to see what happens. I guess there's stuff going on in DC like there always is. I don't think that Great American State Fair thing has gone very well, but the crowds are not there, and they had to shut down. I think at least one day because of the heat. And my guess is they'll probably shut it down. Oh, they would be silly not to shut it down today because it's so awful. Anyway, long story short, happy sesquicentennial, happy quarter millennial, and life goes on. So let's get into what we were going to look at. Let me pull it up here. Also, I had mentioned Averil Colby. This was the first Averil Colby book I ever got. It's called Pincushions. She's real short with the names. She does not have flowery titles for her books. And so there are pictures, there's illustrations here in Patchwork that I thought were in here. And now that I'm flipping through, like, where are they? Well, I might have to take some pictures of this one because there's some kind of cool things in here. Yeah, so here's like they're better images of the things that she had shown in the book. But yeah, there's some really interesting things in here. And the reason, the one that I really wanted to find information about is this pincushion. And not just this one, but the type of pincushion. They were pincushions that pin pillows, I guess is what they were called. And they were not meant to be used really, because like this one, it says it's JHA, I think, or JAH, however the monogram goes. And it says, may the parents' wish be realized and the babe prove a blessing. And this one's 1854. So what they would do is these, beautiful silk satin pillows, they would use the flathead pins and, do these beautiful designs, almost like a sampler, but made in pins. And it was kind of like a little bit of a flex to say like, look, I have enough pins, or, I have the kind of money where I can have this made. And, because pins were handmade at that time, before the Industrial Revolution, before, well, I went 1850s. I think they probably did have some mechanized stuff going on at that point. But before that, I mean, pins were made individually by hand, needles and pins. And the way they did the pins is literally like it was a piece of wire, and one end gets sharpened, and the other end they literally wrap, double the wire back on itself and wrap it a little bit, and then apply heat to it and flatten the end. But you can still see underneath that flattened top, you can still see the wrap. So that's if you ever run into a straight pin that looks funky and you can't figure out why, look carefully. If the top is flat but there's like a wrap under it, it looks like there's a piece of wire wrapping under it, you may have a very old pin. They're quite difficult to find outside of like antique situations. Like the Victorian type pins, like the hat pin type pins, or the pins that the toilette pins, the ones with the big black, tops. Those are easier to find. And I often, in the sewing kits that I've, sewing lots and stuff I purchased at antique stores and thrift stores and stuff, I'll often find them. But those old handmade flathead pins, and they would have been brass. I don't think I've ever run across one in the wild. Of course, I haven't necessarily purchased ancient pin cushions that might have that. So, in any event, that is the reason why I purchased this book, was to do some research on these type of pin pillows. But in what year was this published? I think this is 75. So this was one of the later books she did. Patchwork is 1958. Quilting, that we read, gosh, it was probably 2 years ago that we read her other book. That was like 1971, I think. And then this is 75. But this is what I was looking for. So this color picture. So this sort of a Moravian star type pincushion. And let's see. Also, this little jockey cap is something that is illustrated in her book, in a Patchwork. And then, it must not be in color. The all of the hexagon ones, the English paper piecing ones, are in here too. So she was definitely a lady after my own heart. So, all right, let's jump into the V&A stuff. Now, I'm going to apologize up front. I looked back through my links and I forget where we left off. I feel like it was the one quilt, we had a name, I think it was Ann West, her quilt, that had, it had some kind of offensive imagery. It had enslaved people displayed on it. I think that was the last one we looked at. And there was also a white work quilt. Those were the later ones. So hopefully I'm not showing you anything we already looked at. My apologies if we did. There's one I'm kind of thinking, did we look at? I think we might have looked at this. I can't remember. They start to look the same after a while, you guys. All right, let's move over to my other screen. Look at this beauty. So, there's not, in Patchwork, most of what she's talking about in Patchwork, are these medallion type quilts, and like the ones with all the itty bitty piecing are generally English paper piecing versus, our standard sort of piecing that we're, we understand, like we know of when we say patchwork, what we think of. But somewhere in here, she does mention log cabins, and there are instructions in here too. Let's look in the back. Yeah, I just saw it. Yeah, here we go. There are the instructions. We'll look at this picture later. But I came across this, and it's gorgeous. It's, you know, I think in terms of like holding it up against, you know, some American pineapple quilts, you know, it'd probably be like not any less, but just kind of like, oh, okay, yeah, very similar to what we have over here. But it is, I think it is kind of unique for the UK, because this is really just not the type of stuff that they were doing. You know, they you know, they were doing the English paper piecing and those medallion type things. And so this was kind of a departure. Now I do know, the I think it's the Isle of Man, the Manx log cabin is a technique that was very specific to that little island. And it was very scrappy. It was kind of like you could make it without even having scissors. Like you could literally like bite and tear your fabric, and all you needed to have was finger joints that you could use to measure. They literally measured like with their thumb, from the tip of their thumb to the joint, or their fingers, and they could literally bite the fabric and tear it. So you don't need scissors, just need needle and thread. And then they folded the logs, you know, what you use in log cabins, so it kind of had this bunchiness to it. They're really interesting. I took a class on it a while back, but that's not what this is. So yeah, you know, let's read about it, because you know, it's really pretty. You know, it's got these little pops of blue and red in it. So let us find out why we got this. It is, I think, maybe an American quilt. Brief description says patchwork of printed cottons, 1830 to 1869, USA, pineapple design. So, okay. There is really, the object record just doesn't have a whole lot of information. So it says the V&A does not attempt to collect every type of design and county variation of patchwork and quilting, as to do so would duplicate other specialist collections, such as the American Museum in Bath. However, the 4 American examples in the collection illustrate the development of patterns popularly associated with the American tradition since the late 18th century. So, given by Mrs. Foster Stearns. I wonder, Foster Stearns and Foster? Well, okay, it's kind of a bummer that we don't know much about this. See, patchwork bed cover printed cottons in the design now known as pineapple or pineapple log cabin. Pink square panels are surrounded by smaller strip patches, which radiate outwards in a stepped pyramidic form. The pink squares alternate with the design of brightly colored octagons encased in several concentric frames. The bed cover has a reverse of plain white cotton. Most of the textiles date from the early 19th century. So no indication of how this got into the V&A other than this woman who gave it. Presumably she was someone living in the UK, whether she was a British person or not. I don't know. Well, that is interesting. So very cool. Nothing that they did in England. Okay, moving right along. So I've kind of tried to group these. So here we have, you know, the grandmother's flower garden, or rather the flower, this floral thing, because it's technically, I think it's technically not grandmother's flower garden unless they're surrounded by green, supposedly. I don't know if that's true or not. But I thought this one was interesting because it's a very limited color palette, but it does appear that there's a lot of different kinds of fabrics in here. I mean, I certainly don't think it's a charm quilt per se, but because yeah, you can see that there's repeats. But there's a lot of fabric in here. And I love the fact that, I guess, knowing that they were going scrappy with this, they chose to put these really bright red ones, or the strong red ones, right in the center. And then working their way out, they seemed like there was a method to their madness. But then as they stretched out farther and farther, it seems to me that they really just tried to place them so that they, you know, there were no two exactly the same touching, seems like. And I think they did a good job. You know, I think when you've got a scrappy quilt and you've got lots of lights, lots of darks, you know, you want to space them out so you don't have a pool of color. Like, you don't want the one corner of your quilt to be all the darks, you know, unless that's what you're going for. So I think they did a nice job here. It's a very simple quilt, but probably took forever because there's a million and one of these hexagons in here. Okay, let's see what they have to say about this one. So 1850 to 1875, unknown artist, place of origin is England, so not the U.S. And that's interesting that pineapple quilt said 4 American examples. Only 4 in the whole V&A. That's interesting. Well, I'm surprised they have any, but that they have 4. Now, the American Museum in Bath, I know, definitely has quilts. They sourced quilts from the U.S. I mean, I had the opportunity to kind of witness sort of a quilt study / consultation with the American Museum, where one of our well-known scholars was corresponding with the, I guess, one of the curators there, and they were trying to accurately date a quilt that was very much in question. And so I kind of got to watch that process. And the quilt had come from the U.S. in the 1950s. So there's a kind of a long history there. So, all right. Bed cover. Given by Colonel Morphew. All right. Yeah, there's not much about this one either. Yeah, all the ones that we looked at the other day kind of had nice details. This one does not either. Most of I think I mentioned this the other day. Most of these are at the V&A East, which is the visual storage. I so want to go there. I'm so bummed I didn't get to go when I was in England last year. Okay, here is another rosette. And this one looks like they've turned it on its side. I feel like it's really goes the other way. But this one's got some stripes in it that I thought were pretty cool. They've kind of done some directional stuff, little fussy cutting. You know, fussy cutting seemed like such a modern thing to me once upon a time. You know, I always thought, you know, fabric was harder to come by. Certainly in the you know, mid to early 20th century, you know, we hear the stories of, you know, scrap quilts because fabric was either rationed because of the war or was hard to come by because of the Depression, you know, all these stories. And I just kind of assumed, like, you know, fabric was expensive, and that has been sort of drilled into us. And I thought, well, they probably wouldn't want to waste fabric by fussy cutting because fussy cutting can be wasteful. But these quilts for certain show that I was very wrong in my initial impressions. They did a lot of fussy cutting, and especially with these chintz type of fabrics, or these fabrics that have these large florals, they are clearly picking out the florals that they want. And this one's cool because look at this. So they've got these framed florals, but then they've got these whole rosettes made of florals. And then I noticed this. So I think what's happening here is that all of the hexes and work is done, and then it is laid on top of these border fabrics. So these border fabrics are underneath, and this is all like appliqued down. And you can see the seam here. So the seam goes right under the lowest crenellation within the rosettes. Because at first I thought, oh my goodness, did they somehow fussy cut these? But no, they didn't. That's just solid fabric. But it's very striking, and I think it's really nice. And I like this kind of treatment. It's difficult. Well, it's challenging and time consuming and tedious, I think, to bind one of these if you don't mount it onto something square or lap the edges off, because that's another choice. You could just, lap off this stuff and make it all flat. But I like what they've done here. I think this is nice. There's another little close up. I love that. They've just done such a nice job with these stripes. Very cool. Oh, I like that one. Okay, let's find out what we can find out about this. 1797 to 1852. That is a wide range. I would maybe put it on the earlier side. I mean, with what little bit I know about dating fabrics, because of all those chintzes, the earlier in the 1800s, the chintzier, right? So, okay, here's the physical description. Bed cover of quilted patchwork in plain and printed cottons of 2 1/4 inch hexagons. So about yay big. They're a little bit bigger, right? Cut from white and printed cottons in the design now known as, they're calling this Grandmother's Flower Garden. In the design now known as Grandmother's Flower Garden, rosettes of 7 patterned or colored hexagons separated from each other by plain white hexagons. The fabrics for each rosette have been carefully grouped so that each rosette is made from pieces of one printed textile design. Some rosettes have plain centers. The whole of the ground is covered with colored rosettes, each formed by 7 patterned and separated from each other by the white hexagons. Well, that's a little word salady, but the border is of straight strips of printed cotton, but encroaches on the center in groups of hexagons to fill in the space around the outside rows of rosettes. I do not understand what they're saying there. Encroaches on the center. Okay. There is an inscription on the white hexagons in one corner. Attached to the back is a label with an inscription. Okay. Yeah, the stripes, they did a really nice job mastering the stripes. And I'm thinking, well, I mean, for 2.5 inch, they're kind of bigger stripes. But yeah, they really did do a nice job there. Let's see, the printed cottons. Oh, the cover is lined with beige cotton and quilted with running stitches and diagonal lines. The printed cottons have been grouped to form a rosette or a rosette with a contrasting center made from pieces of one design. Okay, they've already said that. The prints include natural forms, grapes, ears of corn, and flowers. Most are full chintzes, but there are a few cottons which appear to have been demis and drabs. Okay. Demis and drabs, or demis and drabs, demis, yeah. Huh. A demi-chintz? Is that a thing? I don't remember reading about that in the chintz book. Do you guys remember that? I'm not remembering that. There are also numbers of simple stripes, checks, and very small sprigs, 1 or 2 of which may have been roller printed. The rest are block printed. This central section is framed by a wide outer border of roller printed brown cotton with a design of flowers contained in alternate stripes of patterned shapes. The reverse is beige cotton, quilted in running stitch and cotton thread and dye. They repeat the same things over and over. The later border contains flowers in alternate stripes of patterned shades in red, lilac, pale single green, dark brown, pale olive, with areas left in white. Let's look at it again. Oh yeah, okay. I see all that in there. Oh, what a bummer. They only have these 2 pictures. They don't have a picture of the inscription. Come on, V&A. What are you doing? All right, moving along. This one I thought was fun. And I feel like this one might be in the book. But this one has got these like several little pops of this bright chromy yellow. So you've got it in the centers here. And then you have the one rosette. So I guess the difference in this and the other ones is these rosettes don't have that solid color around them. So I guess it's the solid color and not so much green that makes it grandmother's flower garden, I suppose. That makes sense to me. I guess the trend here in the U.S. during the early 20th century was green, garden green, right? So, oh, look at these. So these are prints as well. They're not just solid colored. Looks like I'm going to go out on a limb here. And without knowing anything yet, I'm going to say 1830s. Let's see if I'm right. I'm probably very wrong. I will preface by saying I'm probably very wrong, but this looks like they either are like a lot of silk, like dress silks maybe. And then of course you've got this horrible fringe. I don't like fringe. I just don't like fringe on bed clothing. Oh, look at these. Okay. These purples, this has to be later. This can't be 1830s because this purples. Let's say 1860 because these look like mauvine. Those of you that read with me and Jill when we were reading the Mauve book, I feel like we've looked at so much purple fabric, and here it is. This is it. This is the real deal. Okay. I think this is the only picture, so let's find out. 1850 to 1900. Okay, 1860 wasn't too far off. And that the purple, of course, is what it tells me. So I think 1850 might be too early for it with that purple, presuming it's mauve. Let's see. Silk, okay. Silk patchwork quilt with satin and figured damask and lined with cotton twill. Okay, let's read about it. Bed cover of silk patchwork quilt. Bed cover of silk patchwork quilt of hexagons in a mosaic design. It is worked in woven dress and waistcoat silks of assorted design and colors including checks, stripes, chenilles, moires, floral, geometric, and stylized patterns. The random multicolored hexagon rosettes are interspaced with plain black single hexagon pieces, which give the effect of patterns on black ground. The center of the quilt comprises 5 rings of rosettes working in from a circle of plain pink satin, a cream figured damask, maroon silk with woven floral design in white, the same pattern silk in red on a cream ground. There is a central brown floral silk hexagon made from a dress ribbon. The quilt is edged with a plain gold-colored silk fringe and lined with a brown cotton twill, which is stamped with a spot design. Paper templates can still be felt through the lining. That's interesting. They didn't take the templates out. Sometimes they did that. Kind of weird. So, all right. Next. Okay, so now we're getting into some, oh, there's only one of these. Okay. Getting into some of these medallions. And I thought this one was interesting. Also, they've turned this one on the side, I think. And I can't tell what this is because I can't get in close enough to it. It almost gives me pillar print because of this, like, but I don't think that's what it is. I just cannot tell what all of this is here. Is it figural? Is that a bird? I just can't see it well enough. And of course, they don't have the second picture of it or a close-up. Lovely fabrics. I like the zigzaggy. We saw a number of the quilts in Patchwork have that zigzag somewhere, you know, in the in one of the borders. This is funny. Look, they didn't quite get that matched up right. I like to see stuff like that because I'm like, okay, the crazy stuff I do is okay. I guess if they just flipped it over, it would have worked. They stitched it in there upside down. There's clearly a method to their madness too. Like they're trying to space the fabrics here. And maybe, you know, maybe it's based on what they had. Yeah, maybe it's based on what they had because the sides don't have this other than right here. But then there's one right in the center of the top and bottom. What is that? Oops. Seriously, it's like I cannot quite like focus on what it is. It looks like arches, maybe. So maybe it's like some architecture. It's got to be some ancient architecture. But I keep thinking, like, is it the Hoover Dam? Like, what is this? All right, let's find out. 1838. Okay. I was, oh, this is interesting. Let's see. So this is a little bit of info. At the start of the 19th century, the British market was flooded with a new range of printed cottons. They were used for clothing and furnishings, including the creation of light, bright coverings for the bedroom. Printed textile panels became popular. Many celebrated military victories and coronations. Some were associated with particular causes. Women began to include such panels in their patchwork, revealing an engagement with politics and public debates. Oh. The cotton panel at the center of this bed cover was printed to celebrate the coronation of Queen Victoria in 1838. Okay. Okay. It shows the moment in Westminster Abbey when the crown was placed upon her head. The youth and charm of the 19-year-old Victoria captured the public imagination, and fabrics such as this were a popular way of declaring patriotism and loyalty within the home. Okay, so Victoria's coronation. I would never have gotten that because I could not tell. Okay, what does it say elsewhere here? So we've got a physical description. So materials: roller printed cotton, quilted patchwork lined with cotton. Quilted patchwork bed cover of roller printed cottons. In the center is a square panel from a commemorative textile showing 2 repeats of the coronation of Queen Victoria. The cotton includes the royal coat of arms at the head of each repeat, plus representations of the rose, thistle, and shamrock. The panel is surrounded by a series of 7 wide patchwork borders of printed cottons dating from the first half of the 19th century. The reverse is cream cotton, quilted in running stitch in cotton thread with a pattern of interlacing circles, leaves, chevrons, and other geometric shapes, lined with cotton. Okay, so that's sort of the same info. Historical significance. The donor came from Yochal Burton-on-Trent. She inherited the quilt from her aunt and believed it may have been kept in the family. Interesting. Historical significance. From the time of her coronation, the image of Queen Victoria captured the public imagination. Her portrait could be found throughout the country, in magazines and advertisements, and on commemorative textiles such as this one. Victoria's youth, she was crowned at 19, and charm were perceived by many as a new start for the monarchy. After witnessing the throngs of people that turned out for her formal procession, Queen Victoria wrote, "Many as there were the day I went to the city, it was nothing to the multitudes, the millions of my loyal subjects who were assembled in every spot to witness the procession. Their good humor and excessive loyalty was beyond everything, and I really cannot say how proud I feel to be the queen of such a nation. I mean, that's lovely and all, but it's also like, yeah, you're the queen. They're your subjects. They liked her. I mean, that's good. Let's see. The historical context seems to be pretty much the same. Scene in Westminster Abbey. Printers continue to view royal events as lucrative subjects for textiles. As Linda Perry has shown, the design is loosely based on an original engraving by the lithographic artist G.E. Madeley, but the image has been distorted and simplified to suit the printing process. The reduction in the quality of both design and printing suggests that it was made primarily for export. So it is interesting to note that a second quilt with this textile exists in America and forms part of the collections of the Munson Williams Proctor Arts Institute in Utica, New York. Wow. Okay. And I'm looking here. Let's see. Sue Pritchard, Hidden Histories, Untold Stories, Linda Perry. Yep. Okay. Interesting. I'm kind of curious to know what this looks like. So let's find out. Go back to me because you don't want to look at me trying to Google. All right. Commemorative textile. So Queen Victoria's coronation. Can you imagine if they made fabric today for like the swearing in of the president? Not seeing. It's not popping up on like a quick search. See. Oh, well, it just brings up the same thing if you go to the V&A. Well, I guess we're kind of out of luck here. It doesn't look like I can quickly find anything. I wonder if it's something like this. So this is something that's on Etsy. You too can have it for $987. Okay, let's look at this. So it seems like maybe this is what I was seeing in these kind of arches or openings here. And then here's the coronation happening. So I'm wondering if it's two repeats of like this. But then there was that column-like piece. I'm thinking it's not this exact fabric, but it must be something similar. Where did we leave off? Nope, not that one. Okay, yeah, it does look like the crowd. It looks like this is the crowd. And they're in front of... But I don't know what this is here. Must have been something that was... Okay, well, we could probably chase this forever, so let's move on. This is another medallion. I feel like we looked at something similar to this the other day, I think. But what's interesting to me is like you kind of got these big patch, 16 patches, and then these things look like they're tiny. I mean, they're very small pieces. and a lot going on in here. Yeah, this has got to be early 19th century. I mean, look at this. Really pretty. And it looks like it's stitched with kind of a dark thread. Like maybe like a black thread or a brown thread. Hey, Marianne. Ah, unpacking groceries. I need to do that too. I got to go to the grocery store. Yeah, all right. Let's find out about this one. So this is a quilted, oh, sorry, was there a date? 1800 to 1850. Okay, I would have said 1830 because it seems safe, and that's right in the middle. Quilted patchwork bed cover of printed cottons dating from the first half of the 19th century, with some from the first 2 decades. Okay, so you've got some 1820s fabric in here. At the center, there is an octagonal block printed panel of roses. All of the patches are square. Some patches have been created using a checker pattern of much smaller squares. The quilt is wadded with a coarse woven woolen fabric and quilted in a running stitch, a design of concentric squares. The reverse is a brown printed cotton. The great variety of printed cottons, including dress patterns and men's shirting fabrics of brushed cotton. Designs include turkey red paisley cones and other Indian-inspired patterns, small floral designs, shaded stripes, checks, and spotted fabrics. Ah, given by Maud Marchand. No information available for the provenance, but it was donated in 1924. So entirely possible Averil Colby looked at this quilt. The central panel is printed to commemorate the Battle of Victoria, the Battle of Victoria in 1813, but sits alongside textiles from the 1830s. Is the Battle of Victoria different than the Battle of Vittoria? Because the Duke of Wellington prevailed in the Battle of Vittoria, which happened, I believe, in Spain. Ah, we got Linda Perry and Sue Pritchard again. Okay. Moving right along. This is one I feel like we might have looked at. But if not, it's in the book. I'm positive it's in the book. So this is 1830s to 1840s for sure. Oh my gosh, look at this. Oh, that's some wild fabric. It kind of gives animal print, but not. Oh, wow. That is so interesting. Huh. And then look at these. This pattern too is very, very cool. And then this geometric. Wow. These are so different than the fabrics that I guess we're seeing here. Right? Yeah, that's what I thought, Druid. I thought it was the Battle of Victoria. There's no C. Fought in June 1813. Yeah, major historical engagement. In contrast, the Battle of Victoria does not exist in real world history. Yeah, that's what I thought. They just, it's a typo, right? You're writing about a time when Queen Victoria was getting ready to reign, or what did we just say her coronation was? And then you've got the battle in Spain that's very similar name. I get it. It's easy to make a typo like that. All right. Let's see. Wow. It's a bummer that we can only get up close in this one corner, I think. What interesting fabrics. So there's a lot of this sort of brown, but it also looks like, if I can get in here closer, because you can't see it here. Oh, boo. I was trying to see. Yeah, they're cutting off what I was trying to look at. Trying to see if the reddish one is similar. Is a I feel like these are similar prints, but I can't find a close-up of that red one. Here we go. Yeah, these look like they're very similar. I don't think they're the same. They could be like from the same like mill, kind of the same collection. They did that. They had collections. I like this kind of cranberry, pinky cranberry colored fabric with this, whatever, something floral. All right. Oh, did I mention? It's Welsh. I'm pretty sure. It's got Welsh written all over it. Yup. Place of origin, Wales. Sometimes I'm right. It may not be very often, but so this is 1830 to 1840, possibly made in Wales. Quilted patchwork bed cover of printed cottons in a number of small-scale designs. Some are dress fabrics that date from 1820s to 1840s, including a cotton in an animal print design in the four corners. So that is an animal print. There are 1,690 patches in total. It is quilted in running stitch in cotton thread on what is now known as the wine glass pattern. So just those overlapping circles. The reverse has been constructed from 8 separate pieces of cotton and linen, and it is wadded with cotton. That's kind of interesting, the cotton, because typically in that era they were using a lot of wool. But also, I guess, this early industrial, revolution, you've got, steam power, and you've got all of those inventions that are coming along for processing cotton. So, yeah, maybe it's not so surprising. Let's see. The bed cover contains 1,690 patches. When it was created, the British textile industry was producing a great variety of printed cottons in different qualities, available at different prices. Textile designs were developed with an emphasis on novelty, such as the 4 large leopard skin squares in the corners. The repeal of the excise duty in 1831 reduced the cost of most domestically produced goods for home consumption by 30 to 40%. So, big deal, right? And then here's the historical context. The quilt was created at a time when the expansion of the textile industry improved the supply of cottons to consumers. The repeal of the excise duty in 1831 made most goods for home consumption 30 to 40% cheaper. Radical new textile designs were developed with the emphasis placed on novelty, such as the 4 large squares of the leopard, resembling patches of fur. Such designs were popular throughout the 1830s. And if you guys remember, if you read along with me and Jill the dress diary, she talked about a leopard printed like home deck fabric, it was upholstered a chair, I believe, or a settee. And so I'm assuming it was something similar to that. But I guess I was really surprised to know that animal prints were popular. The wider availability of cottons had an impact on the creation of patchwork by both the working and middle classes. In the novel Sylvia's Lovers, 1863, Elizabeth Gaskell describes the domestic arrangements in a retired farmhouse in the north of England, where the united efforts of some former generation of the family had produced patchwork curtains and coverlet. And patchwork was patchwork in those days, before the early Yates and Peels, textile manufacturers, had found out the secret of printing the parsley leaf. Okay. Scraps of costly Indian chintzes and palampours were intermixed with commoner black and red calico in minute hexagons, and the variety of patterns served for the useful purpose of promoting conversations as well as the more obvious ones of displaying the workwoman's taste. Very interesting. Okay. So we're going to see a bunch now that use this design, this hourglass block. And what's interesting, this one, I believe she talks about these circle. It's like a millstone block is what I would know it as. I'm trying to see. I feel like she shows how to do those. I think. Maybe not. Maybe I'm thinking of something else. In the event. This is interesting because I look at this. That's a very interesting fabric right there. But the Mariner's Compass. This is a pretty complex thing, and it's round, which makes it even more complex. This kind of X thing is interesting too. I feel like there was something we looked at before that had that sort of piecing. They look like X's. And I would say this quilt, I like it. I think it's successful. But one of the things that doesn't stand out is the fact that there are these very distinct different blocks in here. It's hard to tell when you've got a square or when you've got a circle or when you've got this sort of X type thing, because the values are all the same. If you look at this through like a red lens, there's no difference in values for most of this, except for this border. Let's see. You get in closer. I'm interested in this fabric here. Okay, so it's stripes. Then it has this kind of doodad on top. If this was a US quilt, I would be screaming Centennial Green, but I don't think it is. I don't think that's Centennial Green, but Centennial Green is very specific, and it's useful for dating fabrics in the US around 1870s because it's like this toothpaste green color. It's a little bit brighter than that. All right, let's find out about this. So they're calling the round circles the jockey's cap. So I think I've seen it. I've seen that name here too. So what were the dates? 1830. Fabrics that made up the patches here typify the fashion for dense patterns and bright colors in the second quarter of the 19th century. Many of the cottons date from the 1820s. As patchwork spread amongst middle and working class homes, patterns were shared amongst friends, and towards the middle of the century started to appear in magazines. They were later given names such as jockey's cap, which are the quartered circles, and mariner's compass, which is the center. Hand quilting is done on a frame using needles called betweens. The stitches are executed with, okay, so I think they're talking now is kind of not about this quilt, but just in general. So here's the physical description. Bed cover of quilted patchwork and printed cottons. Most of the textiles worked in this design, now known as mariner's compass, date from the second quarter of the 19th century. Okay, they just refuted what they said up above, which is 1820s for those fabrics. Maybe it's not most. Maybe most or later. The pieced inner borders include one of triangles and one in the design now known as jockey's cap. The outermost border is a patchwork design of interlocking triangles. The quilt has a reverse of cream cotton and is quilted in running stitch and cotton thread in various designs, including clamshells and a star in a circle. The widest border is quilted in a running feather pattern. The quilting also follows the design of the patchwork in other areas. It is wadded with thick wool. There are 1,128 patches in total. Given by Miss A.M. Johns from Beckenham, Kent. Oh, let's see. What does this say? The historical context. I kind of like this historical context stuff. This bed cover was created during a period in which the domestic production of quilted patchwork increased in both working and middle class homes. Women were keen to produce items that signaled their aspirations towards gentility, as suggested by George Eliot in her novel, The Mill on the Floss. Oh dear, Maggie, what are you thinking of? To throw your bonnet down there. Take it upstairs. There's a good gel, and let your hair be brushed, and put your other pinafore on, and change your shoes. Do for shame, and come and go on with your patchwork like a little lady. Never read any George Eliot. All right, next. This one, so like I said, got this hourglass shape, or hourglass pattern, but this one, oh my goodness, these two borders, you know, like they love the borders and the medallions across the pond. This one's just like bam in your face. I think what they did here was very successful in that they've got all this busy stuff going on with all these scrappy little blocks, and then they've kind of rounded it all up with these big, thick, solid borders. And I think that is very successful. That's a good idea. And it appears that there is some pretty detailed quilting. And what looks like it might be some fussy cutting. Look at this. That looks like a crown. This looks like it. Maybe they were trying to fussy cut something there. That looks like, yeah. But these fabrics are really pretty. And I mean, these look like silk dress fabrics. Wow. Sumptuous. This looks like it might be the back. Is this the back? Oh, that's a fun print. Look at this. This definitely reminds me of the Indian print, the bedspreads that you can buy today, you know, like at head shops and stuff. That's what this reminds me of. There is a textile history with those. Even if everybody had one in college. Oh, this is cool. I really love this. This is interesting. It's got a very, like, it's got kind of a Japanese flair. This must be close up of it. It photographed more pretty in here. Oh, this is prettier colors. Oh, wow. Huh. Okay. Well, let's find out about it. 1760. I would not have guessed. Oh my gosh. Wow. Okay. So there is a it's 17 something, 17, I don't know if it's 1760 something or 1770 something, but there is a coverlet. A kind of what this reminds me of, but the coverlet that I'm thinking of has, and there's a book, you guys might know the book I'm talking about, but it has, some of the blocks have like figures in them, like birds, and I can see in my mind there's one with a swan, or a goose. I think it's a swan. So yeah, I would not have guessed that this is 1760. Okay. The quilt is said to have been worked by Mary Parker of Crediton for her marriage in 1770. The silks and ribbons of which it is made date from about 1720 to 1750. Holy Moses. Okay. So the physical description. Oh, wow. There's a lot here. Quilted patchwork bed cover of plain weave and complex weave silks. So complex weave meaning some of them are satins. Most of the silks are ribbons dating from about 1720s to 1740s, including some stamped examples. The triangular patchwork borders are quilted in a linear pattern and divided by wide borders of yellow and pink silk satin. These yellow and pink borders are quilted with a pattern similar to that seen on 18th century petticoats, with a sun-like motif, traveling leaves and flowers. It is wadded with wool and lined with two printed fustians. Some of the paper templates are still intact. So this is also English paper piecing. Outer border of quilted satin and silks, meandering stem with flowers and leaves. The patchwork is composed of 2.5-inch squares containing matched opposing triangles. Some of the silks are plain in greens, blues, yellows, pinks, red, buff, white, gray, and black, with the latter showing paper underneath. The lining is of 2 printed cottons, cut and pieced to form 9 large rectangles arranged in 3 rows of 3 alternating patterns. The piecing suggests that these printed materials came from dresses. In the center and at the 4 corners is a printed fustian in red and brown with penciled blue on a white ground. So penciled means after it was printed, they went back in, a person with like little paint went back in and finished up the design. Designs of flowers with curving stems and leaves make scroll edge compartments filled with 5 different small patterns, floral and geometric fillings. Repeat is approximately 10.5 inches high and approximately 16.25 inches wide, including a half drop repeat. So I think this is what they're talking about, the back. Another printed cotton is printed in 2 shades of purple and red on a white ground, and with a design of red stripes patterned by small flowers left in white outline and crossed by thin meandering stems bearing flowers and leaves in purple and red. The white stripes between the red are filled with tiny leafy stems. The repeat is approximately 8.5 inches by 7.75 inches. Wow. So the historical context, I think this is already... The maker was thought to be a resident of Crediton, and the ribbons would have been available in the nearby town of Exeter. Okay, so I've been to Exeter. So this is where highly skilled weavers were producing and trading in silks and ribbons throughout the 18th century. Several Parker families were resident in the area at the time. So, yeah, I guess it's a good chance that Mary Parker, this is accurate. A cream favor with a crown has also been used in several triangles. Favors such as these were created for the coronation and wedding of reigning monarchs and were a popular means of declaring loyalty through everyday items. That's interesting. So that crown piece was, I guess, something that she would have collected from some type of coronation or wedding event. Interesting. Very cool. All right, moving on. This one might be my favorite of all because it's also these simple pieced, you know, and so you kind of got like these, a half square triangle economy block situation, and then you've got these hourglass blocks, but then you have all of these figural blocks, and I'm thinking it must be, they're from fabric, I'm guessing, that has maybe been embellished, because they give me this look like they're either block printed or they have been overstitched or embroidered. Kind of gives me that vibe. We'll have to zoom in closer to see, but I mean, you can see these things are repeated, so they're not individual, you know, one of a kind sort of designs. But there's a lot of them, and they're just interesting looking. And I think this is another very early piece. I'm going to go out on a limb here and say this is probably late 1700s, early 1800s as well. I thought this was cool. We've got this big medallion monogram, I guess. I can't tell what it is. N, I think, and maybe a K. And then, I don't know if that's supposed to be like, I don't think that's necessarily a crown or anything. Let's see if we can get any closer here. Oh, here's the back. Oh, interesting. Look how this was worked separately, and somehow, I guess a hole was left open where that was put on the back. Oh, look at this. Look at this. Okay, so there is embroidery going on here. This is so interesting that we can look so closely at the back. Okay, here's some blocks. Okay, so these are all embroidered. Huh. They're creepy. Look at this. It's like a stork or something, a heron with this bag. Another bag. I don't know, what is going on here? Is this a cat? A fox? I don't know. Okay, so this seems to be, I'm wondering if multiple hands worked on this, because this seems to be, this is a talented needle worker here. You know, they've got this pretty gradation. Like this is like cruel, like with that type of needlework. But all right, why are my things not working now? Either V&A, the V&A has pooped out, or oh, that's weird. Why is it doing this? Uh-oh. Well, I guess we'll come back to it if it resolves itself. But I bet nothing is going to work now. No, just that one. Okay, this one. This one's very interesting because from a distance it has that same vibe, but look up close, it's very different. These also look like silks, but just a different vibe. And this looks like it's got a very thick batting in it. Whatever is in the center of it must be very thick and poofy, because you see it's like almost like the stitches kind of strain down into it. Let's see, this must be the back. Oh, look at this. Oh, pretty. These are the chintzes I like. These sort of single color things. Again, kind of like a tapestry, like a, you know, a coverlet or tapestry you could buy today. I like these better than the, you know, your standard 3-color chintz. And I think this is kind of interesting what they've done here in the center. It's not a medallion of anything. It's just a medallion. There's nothing in here but a piece of fabric. I'm wondering, I mean, could they not afford a medallion? They didn't have access to a medallion. They just like this piece of fabric more. Let's find out. Oh my gosh, this is even earlier. 1690 to 1720. Good gracious, we are getting back there. Okay, so this is generic info. Okay, so this is a quilted patchwork bed cover created from a variety of silk velvets, satins, silver and silver gilt tissues, and other complex weave silks. Oh, wow. The central panel is an early brocade of silver gilt thread on a blue, brown, and white striped ground. Well, this is why there's no medallion, because they did not make medallions yet. They were not making those chintz medallions, so that's why they didn't have it. But this piece, the central piece, has got silver gilt thread. So no wonder that was in the center. The remaining silks are arranged in concentric borders around this brocade. Most of the textiles date to between 1660 and 1700. It is quilted in a design of geometric shapes that follows the design of the patchwork in some areas, a technique now known as stitch in the ditch. It is deeply quilted with wool wadding, I was right about that, and has a reverse of an English or Dutch block printed cotton of red and purple flowers of the same date. Okay, so that's an earlier print. And it's English or Dutch and not Indian. It is bound at the edges with pink silk and was probably intended for a child's bed. A little rich child. Poor children didn't have silver gilt in their quilts. Wow, that is really interesting. Huh. And I guess, I guess the silver is in here, somewhere in this part. Lucky little kid. Okay, so there's just two more. This one I thought was fun because we've got what I think are probably pretty small hexagons made into these little rosettes. And then we have all of these lovely half square triangles. And then all of these chintz birds cut out. Now that I like. You know, I don't love, well, I'll show you quickly. These these are not my favorite. You know, I mean, they're beautiful, they're well done often, but I don't know, they just don't do anything for me. But this is fun. This is whimsical. And it's interesting how this quilt, it like bulges out like this. I'm wondering why it's doing that. Like, what is it? You know, what's weird about their piecing that caused that? But I thought this was really pretty. And then I just love how they've taken the birds. And, you know, it's the same birds over and over, the same butterflies. Obviously cut from some chintz yardage. It's just very nice. I like it. Okay, let's find out what they have to say about this. So 1800 to 1830, that tracks with the chintz. Let's see. This coverlet is a striking example of the craft of patchwork, a popular pastime of the 19th century. Okay, so this is general information. We could skip that. The technique of broderie purse. Let's see. We'll read that. To create one of the surrounding borders, the maker has carefully cut out a series of birds and flowers from fashionable printed cottons and applied them, applicate them to a plain white ground, a technique known as broderie purse. The technique of broderie purse became particularly fashionable in middle-class homes from 1775 to 1840. So here in the U.S., I mean, that kind of tracks, although our broderie purse went much longer because Baltimore album quilts featured broderie purse. And, you know, those were 1840-ish, 45 to 1850 something. So kind of a different trajectory here. Women were keen to produce finely, there's like a fruit fly in here. Women were keen to produce finely worked items that signaled their aspirations toward gentility, while also declaring their access to the latest printed cottons. Broderie purse displayed both to best effect. Many broderie purse coverlets of the period drew on printed fabrics produced in northern textile towns such as Manchester and Preston. The glazed cottons used here are reminiscent of, but not the same as, other coverlets in the V&A collection. Unlined white cotton coverlet of block printed and glazed cottons from the first half of the 19th century. The central section is pieced in the design now known as Grandmother's Flower Garden. Rosettes of 7 patterned hexagons separated by plain white hexagons. The borders around this include 2 wide pieced borders of alternating white and printed cotton triangles and a broderie purse border showing birds and flowers. So I think out of all of these quilts, this might be my favorite one right now. All those half square triangles. Oh, I can see where things are a little bit wonky here. Yeah, I just like this one, but you know, it's such simple units that they've just done over and over and over and over to make this quilt. Okay, and we will end with this bad boy. Now, I know I just trash talked this one because I don't love I just don't love these. I don't know what it is. It's like they're too sparse or something. You know, it's like, you know, you're given this small piece of fabric and you're trying to stretch it out across a big quilt. And, you know, that's just like not enough in between unless there's quilting, you know, very beautiful quilting. And we can't see that if it's there. I suspect it is, but you just can't see it. It doesn't photograph well. I do think this is a very creative use of the border pieces, you know, to create these squares and squares on point. I think they've done a nice job. It just doesn't sing to me the way that some other ones do. Well, let's find out about it. So we're talking about broderie purse again. Bed cover of unfinished white linen decorated with applied motifs cut from glazed furnishing cottons of the 1820s. So they're dating this 1820. The cover is made up from strips, squares, and triangles of white linen, joined by inset strips of printed borders and pieces cut from dress cottons. A large central square is set within a diamond shape, which just touches the centers of the outer border. The corners are also marked out in squares. Each section contains an applied floral motif, and the outer border contains floral wreaths and birds. Given by Miss E.M. Hauer? 1970. It's a lot of unmarried ladies giving things. I've noticed a number of Miss. Let's see. It's just more about broderie purse. So, okay. It's okay. We'll say this is a good one, even though I don't love it. All right. Now, we're gonna read today, but the chapter's very short, so we might be just enough to read here to get us through. Yeah, it might take us till the hour. Okay. So, let me get these illustrations. I gotta find it. Let's see, is this it? All right, bear with me a minute. Okay, I went too far. Somehow or another. Okay, here we go. Okay, so now she's getting into the 20th century, and what we have here are two quilts that if you hadn't told me anything differently, I would have said these look like they came right out of the mid-Atlantic. That zigzag streak of lightning, this thing, zigzag. I've often heard it's quilts from Virginia and maybe North Carolina that use this zigzag, but as a border. And then these, this is the Tree Everlasting, right? Yeah, Tree Everlasting. Oh, a quilt in lavender and primrose. That was pretty. So these are both late 19th century. So, but to me, like, again, like, this doesn't say England to me. If I had not known, you know, they were coming out of this book, I would have never identified these as British. So as a reminder, we are reading Patchwork by Averil Colby, published in 1958. And we have finally reached the 20th century in chapter 11. So, see what she has to say about the 20th century. The turn of the century saw no great change in the kind of patchwork from that which had been made for the last 40 years. So I guess more of this. But it is clear to see, on looking back, that its popularity had fallen. Social conditions were changing, and women's interests were taking on a greater freedom, from the entirely domestic round to out-of-door occupations such as walking, bicycling, and tennis playing. Many more people were able to read, and daily papers brought the up-to-date doings of the world in general into the country districts. Needlework encyclopedias and instruction books on fancy work turned their readers' enthusiasms to crochet work, macrame, open work, and tatting. Quilting and patchwork were not even mentioned. They were old-fashioned and out. So it sounds like she's talking about like Weldon's. That's just one example of the books and instruction books that were coming out. I bought some fruit while I was out, and I think we've got a fruit fly. The moment of the 19th century enthusiasm carried the work along for the the momentum of the 19th century enthusiasm carried the work along for the first 10 years of the 20th century. But by the beginning of the Kaiser's War, which I'm assuming she means World War I, there seems to have been comparatively little patchwork done except by the older women. Materials were cheap and plentiful. Quilts could be made from whole lengths, and there was not the necessity for patchwork, except when habitual thrift was too strong, and the work was done almost automatically whenever there were pieces to be used up. Workers in the North Country were steadfast in the tradition of the simple two-color patterns made in plain calicos and cottons, such as the red printed cotton and white calico windmill and red star. Quilts from Irishoburn and Rookhope in County Durham. A feathered star in pink zephyr gingham from Allendale Town in Northumberland, and another Durham quilt with applied patchwork baskets of red and white calico from St. John's Chapel, which we'll see, I think, on the next couple pages. In other parts of the country, crazy work and box patterns of taffeta and velvet and pieces of the new artificial silk were made. And the new artificial silk most likely means rayon. Late 1800s is when it was being produced in Europe. And it came to the U.S., via imports, but it really wasn't like a homegrown thing until the 1920s, when there were patents in the U.S. for rayon. Along with the many undistinguished patterns, honeycomb quilts consisting of a mass of multicolored pieces were put together with no planned pattern. Even the simple rosette pattern was often obscured by thick striped shirtings and turkey twill centerpieces, joined without the relief of a background in unbleached calico. A few rosette coverlets made of small spot-patterned, striped and check dress prints in blue, pink, and mauve have survived and still look fresh and pretty, but most of the work was roughly made, with monotonous sameness in its lack of pattern and color. Scalloped frills were a fashion finish to many patterns, especially in South Wales. One coverlet still unlined was begun by Mr. Walter White of Bepton in Sussex in the early years of this century, which will be on the next page. So this. And we looked at an insane one on Monday that was in the V&A. Not the same one, but something just as insane as this. The blue satin pieces of his mother's wedding dress are matched with other blue pieces in cotton and set off by baskets, stars, and hexagonal and triangular arrangements in various reds and flowered white prints. It seems like this is probably, like, they're probably tiny, tiny pieces. Each patch, each patch is a little more than, hold your breath, guys, 1/4 of an inch across. So the reason why we just see kind of blurriness, sort of pixelated blurriness here, is because those patches are like teeny, 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 tiny. A little more than a quarter, probably 5/8 of an inch. I saw a quilt like that when I went to Festival of Quilts last year. And I mean, you can imagine, those are tiny, tiny, tiny pieces. Wow. So each patch a little more than 1/4 of an inch across, put in with meticulous care and small, neat stitches. Mr. White still enjoys recalling how he did his patchwork while he was on duty as a night watchman on road work, sitting in my cabin while guarding the newly acquired steamroller belonging to the Midhurst District Council. In spite of a general decline of interest in patchwork, it never ceased altogether to be made whenever there was a need for a cheap bed cover. 40 or 50 years ago, comparatively few of the young women took up the work, which they would have been expected to do as a daily task some 50 years earlier, with the result that too many of the women who do it nowadays, the tradition was handed on by their grandmothers, not by their mothers. This is a lost generation of patchwork makers from the beginning of the war in 1914 until well into the 1920s. In 1928, Mrs. Mavis Fitzrandolph, we love her. Mrs. Fitzrandolph discovered, in the course of her work, a number of old patchwork quilts treasured for their patterns, but little contemporary work being done in places where a characteristic tradition had been maintained for over 1.5 centuries. It became clear by the early 1930s that the making of patchwork was increasing in other country districts in England, wherever members of a village or hamlet could work together. Individual workers were comparatively few, and even the old idea of the family quilt had been forgotten. But working parties of about 12 women who met once a week to make a coverlet under the leadership of one of their number, shades of Newgate Prison, okay, Averil, became an occasion in village life in the winter months. The possibility of raising money by raffling or selling patchwork was usually the reason behind the work, and a number of charities and other good causes, such as the Boiler Fund for church or chapel, or a new lighting system for the village hall, were supported in this way. A good example of a simple pattern was made by a working party in the small Somerset village of Allerton in 1935, when the quilt they made was raffled for the church funds. The center pattern consisted of 6 diamond-shaped groups of hexagons. Each group was filled with brightly colored cotton patches and outlined with a single row of black, brown, or darkish gray. The groups were then arranged to make a star pattern set in a white ground for the center of the work, with smaller stars in the 4 corners. The coverlet was finished with a border of single diamond groups. £5 was considered a handsome sum to raise in the days when raffle tickets were sold for 2p or 3p. And so let's just look at these others before we move on to the next page. So this was Mr. Walter White of Bepton. This is another pineapple quilt. So this one looks like it's just in 2 colors. Pineapple quilt in red and white calico, made in Westmoreland by Miss Annie Thompson of Natland, 1920. So the one that we saw from the V&A was much more colorful. Oh, so here's the basket quilt she just mentioned a minute ago. White calico block quilt with 42 applique patchwork baskets in red calico, 1910. And then this, A feathered star block quilt in pink zephyr gingham and white calico made in Allendale Town, Northumberland, 1910. She just mentioned this one. So she mentioned this quilt way back in the beginning. And this is the brick wall pattern in a Durham quilt of red bricks and calico cement circa 1890. It literally does look like a brick wall. And it looks like the red is all the same fabric. It's not like it's different reds. So yeah, this was probably not very interesting looking quilt. It just looks like a brick wall. I like this though. This is kind of cute. So this is a work box with the usual contents, as well as seam ripper, razor blade and a holder, and a collection of templates needed for patchwork. Patchwork fittings in the box, designed and made by Averil Colby. So it looks like this is something that's been like, these are all little quilty doodads. Okay. Amateur dramatic societies found patchwork an economical and appropriate way of making stage curtains for village halls. And in North Somerset, they are a feature of the stage furnishings in the villages of Backwell, Congressbury, Monkton Combe, and Claverton Down. The village hall at Ellington in the New Forest also possesses patchwork stage curtains, and possibly there are others as yet undiscovered. Here in the U.S., I want to say it's House of Blue. One of the House of Blues has patchwork curtains that were made by Ben Benham, I believe. He's a contemporary quilter. If you don't know who he is, look him up. He's a really very, very interesting contemporary quilter. Examples of patchwork usually have been included in exhibitions run by arts and crafts societies and other organizations interested in traditional crafts. The exhibits are often old pieces of work, but many of them are also newly made. Women's institutes. Remember, Mavis Fitzrandolph talked about the women's institutes. So, exhibition of country crafts in London, organized by the National Federation of Women's Institutes in 1932, 1935, and 1938, included good pieces of work among the quilts and coverlets, as well as smaller articles such as curtains, cushion covers, tea cozies, and pin cushions, which always have been included in the patchwork repertoire. Miss Alice Arms, who was a Durham woman and had been brought up in surroundings of patchwork and quilting, did a great deal to stimulate and encourage the making of patchwork among the country women with whom she worked while she was handicrafts organizer for the Women's Institutes. Renewed interest brought a demand for instruction in making patchwork, which outran the supply of mother-to-daughter method of teaching, and towards the end of the 1930s, it was a recognized subject for classes of adults in the villages. The teaching was often given by women whose only qualification was that they had picked it up from someone else and were prepared to hand on their knowledge. But much good work was done by them. These amateur teachers had a great deal of encouragement and help from Miss Muriel Rose, whose knowledge and experience has done so much towards keeping alive the best in traditional work. Her interest in patchwork is largely responsible for the life and vigor of the present-day work. Quilts made at Much Haddam, in which Miss Rose had a personal interest, were shown at exhibitions in London, and their style and patterns set a standard for a great deal of the work which had been done since in simple arrangements of color and the appreciation of white as a background. It says much for the work which was done immediately before Hitler's war. I guess, were they not calling them World War I and II in the 50s? Maybe not. Maybe that's more of a modern thing for us. Do you guys know? Like, when did that terminology come to fruition? Because she's saying World War I is the Kaiser's War and World War II is Hitler's war. Interesting. So that work, done immediately before the war, that it survived the disruption of the country's way of life. It was a very popular kind of work once more, and with the coming of the war, the enthusiasm for it was turned to making bed covers for use in hospitals, convalescent homes for civilians or soldiers, and hostels run for men and women on leave from the services. The quality of the patterns fell from grace again, and there was, from necessity, little discrimination about the kind of materials which were used. Everything was grist, and into the patchwork it went. So anything and everything. The coverlets were made also to meet the inevitable necessity for raising money by raffles and sales. Girl Guides in Lancashire, so Girl Scouts, the British Girl Scouts, sold diamond patches, 6 pence each or 4 for 2 shillings, for a quilt they made in aid of a service charity, and afterwards presented it to Wadden Hall, the Girl Guide Training Center at Clitheroe, as an example of English traditional work. Men and women on fire watching duty in more than one air raid warden's post passed the time on quiet nights in doing patchwork. One of them was made as a signature quilt, and the penciled signatures of the wardens were embroidered over in simple stitchery. Civilians on unaccustomed and difficult jobs made patchwork in their spare moments for relaxation. A wartime driver made a lot of patchwork during the war, as I found it a soothing restorative when I came home from driving miles in the blackout. The unwarlike center of the coverlet, in a future figure, let's see. How far forward is this? Oh, okay. The unwarlike center of the coverlet in figure 181, which I'll show you in a second, is unforgettably associated with the arrival of Hitler's second in command, Rudolf Hess, in Scotland in 1941. It was completed on that day. And so I think this is a quilt she made. Oh, come on. Why are you downloading now? You've downloaded ages ago. So look. Looks like she's done all these hexagons. Oh my goodness. And then these butterflies and bees. I wonder, did she literally fussy cut 2 different things to make this? It doesn't look like it's applique on top. I could be wrong. But oh my goodness, if she literally cut fabric and put on 2 different hexagons, I mean, wow. Oh, and this wreath of flowers, how amazing. And then it looks like for the outside is like white and like this little dotted, maybe a few stripes. So this says detail of the center pattern. Okay, so I guess we see the whole quilt in a future figure. The pattern is made of printed cottons with no embroidery, designed and made by Averil Colby. Wow. Okay, so, Druid's got some details for us, so let's see. Oh gosh. So World War I is often called the Kaiser's War because it was a traditional imperial conflict driven by Emperor Kaiser Wilhelm II's desire for global power. In contrast, World War II is known as Hitler's War, defined by Adolf Hitler's deeply ideological, racial, and genocidal quest for Lebensraum, living space in Eastern Europe. Yeah, I'll let you guys read the rest of this. It's some good info. Yeah, the Treaty of Versailles. Oh, some of us know our world history. If you know, you know. So the Kaiser, living in exile in the Netherlands, reportedly condemned the Nazis, stating that Hitler had turned a nation of poets and musicians into a mob led by liars. Well, that's very interesting, Kaiser Wilhelm. These world leaders, I tell you what. Yeah, this is all good World War One and Two info. I'll let you guys. I won't read it all, but I mean, obviously the Kaiser's War and Hitler's War, but when did we start calling them World War One and Two? I wonder. I mean, there's seriously got to be some like etymology there or some history there. Okay. The end of the war in 1945 did not bring the end of textile rationing, which was to last for another 6 years. And so there was still a genuine need for economy. So this is encroaching in probably the time she's writing this book. And so there was still a genuine need for economy. Many women who had been drawn into work parties during the war, in which they had learned to do patchwork, began to make it for themselves, not only for the sake of the economy, but for the satisfaction they found in the color and pattern making. That's why we do it, right? A great number of the work parties did not disband, but continued to meet and do patchwork during the winter months each year, held together by their pleasure in the work and the mutual interest in companionship. With the shortage of materials and clothing, it was only natural that some attempts were made to make some kinds of garments of patchwork. Not all were successful. Waistcoats made from tailor's cloth patterns were adequate and warm. Dressing gowns and jackets filled a need and left the rationed materials to be made into more essential daytime garments. So if you remember, when I went to Festival of Quilts last year, I saw that quilting during wartime exhibit, and there was all of those gorgeous dressing gowns that were made out of the hexagons basically. So Druid might have some details. Okay. So it was Franklin Roosevelt. So the Times and Time magazine applied it directly to the new conflict. Okay. So officially adopted by the press in the 40s. Oh, no, wait a minute. 1939. So when Germany invaded Poland and Britain, France declared war, the phrase World War II was officially adopted by the press, with publications like the British newspaper, The Times, and Time magazine, applying it directly to the new conflict. All right. So as the 40s, Franklin Roosevelt made it a term here, I guess. And then Truman officially adopted it as in government documents in September 1945. Okay. So let's see. People called the first global conflict the Great War. So that I'm used to hearing that. Anything that was written before World War II, they called the First World War the Great War. Time magazine became the first major publication to use the term World War I. In that same article, they coined the term World War II speculatively, referring to an upcoming anticipated war. Well, we've been hearing about World War III for several decades now, right? Just cross our fingers and knock on wood, right? Okay. So we're back to clothing. Short capes and shawls made from soft woolen pieces. Collars, cuffs, and belts helped to keep the wardrobes going, and some enterprising workers made indoor and bedroom slippers with uppers of patchwork. Ecclesiastical vestments, 3 of them are copes, have been made in recent years. One in honeycomb hexagons was made by parishioners for the new Church of St. Christopher's in Southburn, Hampshire. Not New Hampshire, Hampshire. Another, completed in the spring of 1957, was made throughout of 2-inch diamond patches, and 3 crosses are incorporated in the design, one on the back of the work and one below each shoulder. The third cope was the work of women in the Cotswold village of Burford and was given to the parish church in commemoration of the coronation of Queen Elizabeth II. The pieces in the body of the cope are church window hexagons of black, red, green, and white satin, brocades, and velvet. The orphery is made of crimson velvet and gold octagons and squares, and the hood is in a pattern of crimson velvet and green and white satin, incorporating a cross in the arrangement of the patches. The morse, these are parts that I'm not entirely sure what all the parts are. I don't know what the orphery and the morse are. The hood is the thing that hangs down the back. The morse is in a diamond check of red velvet, and white brocade squares. The hood, morse, and orphery are geometrical in pattern, in contrast to the shaded coloring of the rest of the work. Hidden within the lining of fine green glazed cotton is an embroidered panel of linen, recording the names of the workers, the date, and the purpose of the work. Stoles of patchwork are occasionally found, but it is surprising how few church vestments have been made of patchwork. Heavy brocades and satins, especially those with woven metallic threads, are not suitable for many household furnishings, but are appropriate and effective in any article used on ceremonial occasions. Coverlets were not numerous, although a few were made during the war, but since 1945 they have become popular again. The notable difference from the older fashions being that the majority are made in smaller sizes for beds which now measure considerably less than those of 200 years ago. So, not as tall anymore. Instead of the 11 feet of those days, a modern bed averages about 3 feet in width. This means that less work is entailed, but even so, most large pieces of patchwork, such as coverlets and curtains, are made by a number of people working together. Members of women's institutes, townswomen's guilds, societies interested solely in needlework, and other organizations, such as the Embroiderers Guild, are particularly active in this way. Patchwork is not generally made in schools, but where teachers themselves are interested, the younger children are often taught to make small articles. At Tudor Hall School near Banbury, the children make patchwork coverlets and other small articles in weekly needlework classes, which are part of the school curriculum. I love that. The headmistress, Miss Nesta Inglis, makes the designs and works with the children, and the work is sold at an annual sale for school charities. The number of individual workers throughout the country must now be counted in many hundreds. Classes in country districts and schools of 3 or 4 days duration in residential colleges under the control of the local education authorities in many counties are held especially for giving instruction in craft work. Traditional patchwork is included among the subjects. The examples of contemporary work, which are illustrated, were all made after 1949, the earliest being of the coverlet, which was completed in that year, to a given design by Miss Hill and Mrs. Randolph of Backwell in Somerset. It was sold and in 1956 was loaned for an exhibition in Ottawa as an example of contemporary English work. So let's look at that. Come on now. Okay, so these are small items. Pin cushion, and then this is a cushion cover. Okay, so this is the cope she's talking about, she was describing. Oh, and it was designed by her. And then what is this? This is the star pattern coverlet. Yeah, so this one was what she was just talking about. Yeah, this is the one she's just talking about. Earliest being a coverlet, which was completed in that year. So, let's see. A star pattern coverlet in red, blue, and white cotton hexagons with small star shapes in diamond patches of dark blue. The Milky Way is a contemporary name for this pattern. I've never heard that before, but I love it. So this was also Averil Colby. But it says designed by Averil Colby, so, but not, was it made by her? It's not saying that it was made by her. And this is the complete quilt that we just, oh, look at this whole thing. First of all, it's very long. But all of this dense stuff, we know from looking at that detail, are all dense, fussy cut flowers. Wow. And then how she has the bees and the butterflies. Oh my gosh. This is amazing. I know I glanced at this when I flipped through the book, but I had not given it much. Wow. Okay, we'll leave that there for a minute. I'm going to go a little bit over today, but I'm literally like have less than a page to go. Another coverlet loaned for the same exhibition was a copy of the 18th century strip pattern that we've already seen, and made by Mrs. A.K. McCosh of Coulter in Scotland in 1956, of contemporary glazed cotton prints. The coverlet shown in figure 186, which is this, is made of geometrically shaped pieces, hexagons, in an ungeometrical pattern and does not conform to the conventional type of pattern. The colored patches are kept to the swags and garland of printed floral chintzes, except for a scattering of single floral hexagon pieces in the ground. The white ground is made from a collection of linen, calico, piqué, and marcella pieces, and is broken by a pattern made from lavender spotted white cotton. Detail of the center is shown, and we've already looked at that. So the pincushion and cushion cover, which we just saw, are in strictly geometrical and traditional patterns, and the shapes of these patches in the pincushion and of the pattern in the cushion are emphasized by the way in which the material designs have been used. The accuracy was assured by cutting out the patches with A templates of each shape. It is sad that the ways of patchwork and quilting have not continued to run closely side by side. Even in the early years of the 19th century, when applied work coverlets were so much in fashion that the quilted covers were ousted from the top of the bed, patchwork was still used as a top for quilts. Nowadays, the quilters who are upholding the tradition of their craft do not practice it on patchwork, and most of the women who make patchwork do not possess the necessary knowledge, skill, or equipment to quilt their work. A small number of unpadded coverlets have a line of running stitches around the outline of some patches or parts of the colored pattern, but generally speaking, this is now done as a means of attaching the lining to the patchwork top without an interlining, and in no way compares with the decorative patterns on true quilts. Knotting or tying has taken its place to a great extent and is sufficient to keep in place a flat inner lining, such as domette, flannel, or a blanket. Patchwork in the 1950s has not yet achieved the gentle elegance and precision of the applied and mosaic patterns of the early 1800s, nor has it sunk to the second-rate gentility of 100 years ago, which indulged in fussy detail and set its pins and needles into over-elaborate crazy work, or more intricate patterns. It is in the process of shaking off bad habits acquired in the war years of stress and hasty economy, and getting down to shaping its contemporary character with materials, especially cottons, which are good and plentiful enough to be cheap. In spite of the temptation of inexpensive ready-made clothes in the shops, home dressmaking still flourishes and provides an ample supply of cuttings for patchwork. Chair covers and other small furnishings are also made at home of gay and appropriate materials. Retail shops and trade houses are willing to sell out-of-date patterns and workroom cuttings by the pound weight. The background setting for making patchwork is not unlike what it was when patterns were at their best, except that today's workers have a rich tradition upon which to build. And I think that's lovely. So that's technically the end of the book. But on Monday, what I will do, I will find her quilt in color. I know if it's not at the V&A, I will be shocked. It didn't come up in my earlier search because I had not included 20th century quilts. So, but I want to see what this looks like. So it says High Summer is a contemporary name for this design, completed in 1951. High Summer. But we'll also take a look at some of the templates she has in here. I'm making templates because this is interesting stuff. She seems to me that she was a very a technical person. Like she was very very precise, and I think she found precision to be important. It seems like. All right, guys. Well, that is all I have for you today. Stay cool. Oh my goodness. Drink lots of water. stay hydrated. And I hope you have a wonderful July 4th. Whether you have plans, cookouts, the semi-quincentennial, the fireworks, all those kinds of things. Or if, like me, you're going to just stay huddled in the dark in your house with your cats. I hope you have a wonderful weekend. So, if you have any fun stories, save them up so we can you can share on Monday. Let me know what happens. Other than that, I will see you guys soon. Take care. Bye. Mwah!